As the computer industry continues to grow, there's an abundance of used parts and components at affordable prices, leading to affordable PC gaming for all of us. Is what I would say if it weren't for the fact that an almost 10-year-old graphics card still goes for well over $100. On top of the consistent overpricing, scalping, and blatant quality issues for even flagship products, leads to a space where not everyone can afford or really want to get into. Rule 1 was that I was not allowed to fix everything. Most of the parts had to work from the get-go. You'll see what I mean by that later. Rule 2, it had to be fully functional for most modern-day games. I know that some games nowadays require ray tracing. However, that might be a tough ask for the $250 budget I set. Rule 3 was that it had to be made from scratch. This means no Dell Optiplex or stuff like that. Now that those are set, it's time to sit down and do some deal hunting. Admittedly, I was making this so I could use it as a console for my Steam games in college, as my big rig couldn't quite make it there. So that left me with two whole options for form factor: Micro ATX and ITX. The good news is that the motherboard for Intel's 8th gen CPUs are kinda cheap now, albeit not super plentiful. I ended up getting a $49.08 Asus Prime H310M, both because it worked with the CPU I bought, but also because I can upgrade it later to a maximum of an i9-9900K. Luckily, it did come with some nondescript 16GB RAM that runs at like 2400 MHz, so pretty decent deal. Very few complaints, except for a few more USB ports. But this build is a build of sacrifices. For the CPU, I spent like a week on eBay. The games I play are super lightweight, so I didn't have to go for like an 8700K. And due to the motherboard I chose, and also the CPU I chose for this, I ended up getting an i5 8500K for $49.72, shipping and taxes applied. A little pricey for what I wanted, and recently I've been seeing like the i7s for about the same price. So if you can get those from like a bid, I'd recommend doing that. The CPU is still like pretty useful and works well enough for the purposes I really needed it for, so... And it came with a stock cooler, which is a huge bonus. For the extras, all the other bits and pieces, except for the GPU, we'll start off with the power supply. For that, I actually kicked it off with a EVGA 600 watt non-modular that I got for about $38.67. No clue what model it is, but it has an 80 plus bronze certification. I do recommend looking for a modular PSU, because cable managing this was an absolute nightmare after I got a different case for it. For storage, there was an old WD Blue 500GB SSD laying around my stuff, but to keep this kind of fair, you can get one of those for like $20 on eBay. So we'll chalk that up to 20. Then we close up with the case. The thing you've been seeing the whole time. I got it for $27.28, super open air. It's good for the thermals, especially for the GPU. And I know you've been seeing it throughout like different parts of the video, but the GPU. This was the hardest part to find due to the previous scalper epidemic in 2022-2020, where GPU prices have just inflated to completely unreasonable levels. Luckily, I was able to find a Titan X Pascal for $51.43. The guy who sold it to me, I think had a faulty HDMI cable or something like that, because when he sent it to me, it super worn out thermal paste, but the moment you replace that, it worked just fine. This thing runs very well, actually. It gets over 100 FPS in my favorite games, which aren't super hard to run. The only one it's kind of low in is Marvel Rivals. But if you do get a GPU used, don't gamble as much as I did. I got extremely lucky because the guy thought it was broken. And now, for all the marbles, the final price comes out to $236.18. Pretty damn good for being less than the MSRP of an Intel B580 GPU. Admittedly not the prettiest system, but who cares when it runs well? For the first benchmark, I went right into Marvel Rivals, cranked up all the settings to Ultra 1080p native, and ran the built-in benchmark. Overall, not terrible. It had an average FPS of 33, with the 1% lows hitting 23. However, putting the settings at high and using the Intel XS upscaler, I was able to hit like 100 to 120 on some maps. Just depends on how much you want your upscaling to be. The next up was some Black Myth Wukong. Now, while I don't actually own this game, I do have its free benchmark. Going into it, I started with the highest settings I can do, which is 1080p native. All the settings set to cinematic and no RTX, as, you know, it's not an RTX card. With these settings, we got a whopping 20 FPS average with 1% lows in the 8s. This means that at slightly lower settings, you should be able to pull 30 to 45 FPS just fine. 3D Mark Steel Nomad got a score of 2171, and 3D Mark Time Spy got a score of 7911. And I am out of benchmarks. I don't own all that many games on Steam. I've been working on getting more, so maybe I'll do some further testing later, depending on if this video is positively received or not. So make sure you guys like or comment if you want to see more. Just as some last minute disclaimers, this only included the cost of the main body. The actual PC, all the peripherals and stuff aren't included. It also has no Wi-Fi and just Ethernet, but for the lack of features, this thing is very quiet, almost silent, and the temps aren't bad either. I actually went back and bought it a MSI Wi-Fi 7 card along with a better case. It's like the, I'll put it on screen, but it's a Lian Li MATX case. It's pretty good now. I got those for the sake of traveling safety, really. And that's it. This thing works great for what I need personally, and every so often I might come back and give updates on it, because I have an end-of-life plan for this, just turn it into a big storage box sort of deal. I have a name tag sticker itching to be put on this thing, so if you want to name the computer, make sure you comment down below or like a comment. I have another project I want to do here, where I use an old Cooler Master case with some pretty sweet, slightly old hardware to do a resto mod sort of thing. If you want to see that soon-ish, or just to support the channel, go ahead and subscribe so that I can actually get monetized. This was a super fun project, and I'd like to do more videos like this in the future. That's all for now. See ya.